I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mary Kay, roll call, please.
Dr. Dave Bardo.
Here.
Trina Borneman.
Here.
Dr. Noel Deep.
Here.
Jill Maddock Nelson.
Here.
Kristen Matt Miller.
Here.
Andy Mary.
Here.
Danny Pyatt.
Here.
Angie Schreiber.
Here.
Shereen Schrader.
Here. Okay, item 2, citizens and delegations. Start with letter A, students representatives report. We don't have our students here tonight and did not receive an email from them. Mr. Rogers, do you have something?
Yes, I do. I printed it off.
Okay.
I don't know where I set it down somewhere, but I can read it.
You want to come up to the mic and read that on behalf of the students? Thank you.
All right, and this is from Lucy Slominski and Ava Tatro. In the academics portion, juniors have taken their ACT portfolio night, also will be on April 12th. We have the forward exam going on for 8th grade in all core subjects, 10th grade social studies, and the testing window is now open. We have 9th.
Hi, Ava.
Sorry I'm
Hi,
late. I was
Ava.
at Walmart printing pictures from vacation. A little longer than I expected, so I'm sorry about that. Where'd you leave off? Okay, so 9th and 10th grade have their pre-ACT on April 18th, and I, as a junior, we just got done taking ours. So that was a fun 4.5 hours. Third quarter ends on March 31st, which is this week's Friday.
You can take a minute and get
Thanks.
composed.
For field trips, Lucy and I recently went on a student council field trip. It was us and a couple of other kids. So we went to Eagle River to seek out new ideas and stuff like that for this coming school year and what other kids do at their assemblies. But funny thing is, have you guys ever heard of Chicken on the Roof?
Chicken on the roof?
Yeah. It's a big assembly game that we play at least at every homecoming assembly. So, I don't know. Should we demonstrate?
Yes.
Okay. So usually we'll have 2 couples from each grade. They'll come out on the floor, and I don't really know what else. There's music playing and stuff. It's like musical chairs. So one partner goes on the inner circle, walks a different way, and then the other partner goes on the outer circle and walks the opposite way. So then someone will stop the music and say, fork and spoon, and then you have to run and find your partner and do spoon. It's spoon. And then the other one does fork. And then there's a lot of different other things like that. Like
I was all prepared for chicken on the roof.
do you want to do that one?
Sure.
Okay, so then, ready? Chicken on the roof. And then you have to balk like a chicken, so balk, balk, balk.
Okay.
That was good. All right, so none of the other schools knew that. And Lucy, it's kind of taking a long time, but short story. So Lucy is all the way on the other side of the room. She's in a different group talking about whatever else, and I'm in a different one. So I'm trying to explain this, and all the other kids are like, what is that? And I'm like, I can't believe you guys have never heard of this. So I yell at Lucy, I'm like, Lucy, they don't know what Chicken on the Roof is. The whole room goes quiet. They're like, what is that? So me and Lucy demonstrated that for them too. So moving on, we have special events. So we just got back from spring break. So those of you who went on spring break, hope you had a good one. And then Good Friday is coming up. I don't know why I put that in there, but students don't have school that day. Me and Lucy are quite excited. Looking ahead, we have prom coming up on April 29th. It's called Play Your Cards Right. So we're going for like a casino theme, kind of like that. You guys should come, it's gonna be really fun. And then Easter's coming up. I don't know if you have anything planned for that. Not yet. Sports and clubs, so baseball, they have had their morning practices, and I get here quite early in the morning. I'm here by like 7:15, and sometimes my parking spot is taken. It's a little aggravating. So, and then softball, girls just went to Florida for spring break. They had so much fun. They played 4 games there. Got a little tan. Good for them. Golf, practice starts tonight. Same with boys tennis and girls soccer. Track, their practice also started recently. And they had a track meet on March 16th. I'm not sure how they did. I think they did really well because usually, second, you guys know more than me. They usually do well because of track. So, and then trap started last week, I believe, on Monday. So that's pretty much it. You guys have any questions for me? Kind of winging it tonight. Thank you.
Any questions for Ava?
You guys want to see my pictures from vacation? None? Yeah, get your partners. No, I wouldn't have you guys do that.
I do have a question, and it's more so for Mr. Rogers. So the 9th and 10th grade students, do they have like practice ATs?
They've got pre-ACT coming
So what
up
does that mean?
on April 18th. It's the test that takes the place of ACT Aspire. So we used to have the state required test for 9th and 10th grade used to be ACT Aspire. Now it's called pre-ACT Secure. We're doing that on April 18th.
Okay. All right. And do we help? Is there anything that helps the students study for the ACT or
Well,
anything like that?
in previous years, we had done ACT Academy, which is through the ACT website, and we had specific days that were designated for practicing ACT Academy, which had like different grade levels. So 8th, 9th, 10th grade, 11th grade. But this year with the revamping of the ACT Aspire into pre-ACT, ACT Academy had gone away. So we had been trying to dig and find some other practice sites, which we did find and had used, but they weren't as targeted and as user-friendly in terms of their responsiveness as ACT Academy had been. So ACT is still working on that and taking our feedback on that. So yes, we've had practice on it, but it hasn't been as intentional as in the past.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
And I'm sure you'd rather hear that report from Ava. She's so bubbly and happy and can describe a lot more on her report than what I could. So.
Well, I can't say that the previous practice ACTs, like Mr. Rogers said, they weren't as quick as giving back the results. Whereas I took my practice ACT a month in advance before our actual ACT, and the results were, as soon as you were done the test, it gave you your score. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Everybody good?
All right, thank you very much. Thank you for being here so you can demonstrate chicken on the roof.
Sorry I was late.
We will all remember that for sure. Mr. Rogers, did anybody sign up to speak?
No.
Nope. Then I will save the speech about public comment. Only thing I will say is whenever you are presenting to the board, please come to the microphone and speak directly into the microphone. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, can I
Yes, sir.
speak in public comment here?
Yes, sir.
So I attended Day at the Capitol last Wednesday and got to meet with Senator Falkowski's aide, and I met with Representative Callahan's aide, and then Representative Callahan came in and met with us too. We talked mostly about special aid funding and where that might go, and where the revenue limit might, what we'd like to see with the revenue limit. I think there was 110 districts represented, and a lot of districts, Rhinelander, for example, had 5 people there. So they were pretty well prepared. Katie and I also went to the listening session at City Council on Saturday, and Mary Falkowski and Calvin Callahan were there. And Mary talked about transportation aid, and she was saying she'd like to get rid of sparsity aid and just fund all costs over $500 per student, which would be a benefit to our district. And she also said she supported raising the revenue limit to the state average. So, Katie, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
So it was actually really nice kind of going and lobbying with Andy there and being able to talk with the senators and see once where the biennial budget's gonna end up. The next biggest thing is the joint finance committees are meeting next, and I highly encourage each and every one of you to get out and lobby with them, and if you are, let us know. We will partner up with you, or at least I will. I'm hoping to make it to Minocqua on April 26th. So please let me know if you're available that day. It's a Wednesday. And Joint Finance Committee is really the big dogs in the books. They're the ones who you want to get in front of and let know what, what's on your mind. I believe, Andy, you and Tim went in 2011. Found his notes today when I was digging.
I don't think it was that long ago. I think it
Or
was
2001, sorry, or 2021.
2021.
I'm just going back decades upon decades, though, 2021. And it's really neat seeing what was lobbied for then and what's kind of on the docket now. So if any of you guys are interested, please let me know. If any of you guys want a short, condensed lesson on school finance, let me know. I've been doing lots of research on that. And look forward to many more times kind of getting in front of our senators and lobbying for Antigo School District. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, let me just add that Senator Falkowski is on joint finance, so, if you got her ear and she's amenable to something, that's a good thing. And also, transportation aid was one of the things that Tim and I lobbied for last time and nothing happened. But I don't think because you lobby for something and nothing happens, it doesn't mean it's a wasted effort. It just means it might take it a couple years to get some traction.
Okay. Thank you for going to the day at the Capitol. I would have liked to have been there, but I was in Missouri at the time. But thank you so much. Okay, item 3, consent agenda. Letter A, approval of agenda, minutes, finance reports, requests for overnight travel, and district retirements and resignations. I will also like to amend the agenda because we do have some guests with us tonight from the YMCA in Wausau. I would like to move item H to item B right after the girls hockey co-op sponsorship. So if that is okay, we will include that in the consent agenda to move that item. I'll be looking for a motion now.
I move the board approve the agenda with the modification as presented, minutes from the February 27th, 2023 Board of Education meeting, March committee meeting minutes, district retirement and resignation report, request for overnight travel, financial reports for February 2023, consideration of current bills, checks 6721 through 6789 in the amount of $216,650.67, ACH number 222-300-890 through 222-301-000 in the amount of $827,426.51, and one wire transfer in the amount of $20,056.70 for a total of $1,064,133.88.
Okay, motion has been made. Dr. Deep, would you like to speak to your motion?
Speaks for itself.
Okay. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, the voting devices are now open. If you're, sorry, Dr. Barrow?
I forgot about the buttons for that. Mary Kay, I need to abstain on check number 6773. Thank you.
Okay, now the voting devices is open. If you are in favor of the motion, yes. Not in favor, no. Would anybody like to change their vote? Okay, the vote is now closed, and the motion carries. Board action, letter A, consideration to approve WIAA girls hockey Cooperative Team Sponsorship with Northland Pines. I will be looking for a motion.
I move the board approve the WIAA Girls Hockey Cooperative Team Sponsorship with Northland Pines as presented.
Motion has been made. Dr. Deep, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, I support it.
Is there any other discussion?
I just have a question. Before, we were just co-opt with Rhinelander, is that correct?
Mr. Moronk, if you can please come to the mic, please. Thank you. Schofield, I'm sorry. I always get the two of you mixed
Don't
up.
worry, I get that. Yeah, so Northern Edge basically was us and Rhinelander and Lakeland, and Rhinelander graduated a lot of girls, and we're not getting a lot coming back. So after looking at options, with possibly co-oping with Medford or Pines, it was suggested by our head co-op Rhinelander that we all move and merge and go with Pines.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions while Mr. Schofield is at the mic? Thank you, Mr. Schofield. Hearing none, the voting machine device is open. Would anybody like to change their vote? And the vote is now closed. And the motion carries. Item B, consideration to approve Aquatic Center Memorandum of Understanding with Woodson YMCA. I will be looking for a motion.
I move the board approve the memorandum of understanding with the Woodson YMCA to provide coordination and direction for the Clara R. McKenna Aquatic Center.
Motion has been made. Jill, would you like to speak to your motion?
No.
Is there any discussion on the motion on the floor?
Should we hear from the
I have a question.
Yes, Angie.
I was just wondering, like, who's gonna be, handling the promotion of the aquatic center then?
Brian, would you like to come down and join Katie Ann? We're fortunate to have Brian with us.
Yes, I will actually introduce, so Brian Bailey with the Woodson YMCA is with us, along with Abby Tesh, who is the aquatics director. And so they're going to be our subject matter experts to answer any of your questions.
And might I add, Brian Bailey is an alumni of the Anago Red Robins.
Class of '88.
I'll throw that in there.
So, so basically, when we were approached about the possibility of running the aquatic center, we used a very similar MOU that we use with the Mosinee School District, which we've actually been running for 25 years. And we would operate, we would hire, we would train, we'd support, we basically would package it all, but we do it in unison with, you know, every community is a little bit differently, but you have a aquatics committee, we'd work with that. But our goal would be is how can we best meet the community needs? So it's still your pool, it's still your community, and it's us, how can we make sure it's maximized? Abby's got a wealth of knowledge. She's been in aquatics for many, many years. Not only do we run our own 4 pools between our 2 branches, we run the Mosinee Aquatic Center, we run the Weston Outdoor Aquatic Center, which we've done the last 4 years, and we run the Rothschild Aquatic Center now. So you can see, and it's being done at a time where there's a lifeguard crisis in the country. She's somewhat of a lifeguard guru, does great things, and developing young swimmers and keeping them on that track to become different levels, first jobs, professionals. So that's really where the norm of life or aquatics is happening, is how do you self-develop? And with the main thing in mind is how do you keep a safe pool, and how do you keep a pool that is meeting your community's needs? And that's really what our thought would be, is in this process, we're here to do what's best for the community, meaning we would listen. We would look at what's going on now, and would try to improve any areas of need that would be there. So when it comes to advertising, whatever that look would be, we would be talking with you as a community on what we're looking at trying to advertise out from that standpoint. But probably a lot of the things we'd look is how's the pool usage being used? What I find is there's always a prime time that people want to look for certain things, and we got to look at things from that angle. How can we serve as many people as possible, from the youngest to our seniors? So that's really what it comes down to. As we would get our hands around looking at what that is, we would slowly make adjustments where there would be needed. But the big thing would be, how do we recruit, retain, and staff to make sure that we're running a safe pool for the community?
Angie, does that answer?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have a question for Brian or Abby?
I have another question.
Wait 1 second. Let's see if anybody else. JD?
Did you guys go talk to the Aquatic Center board? How did them and the donors feel about it?
Katie Ann will come up and answer that because we had this conversation too.
Yes, so Brian and Abby and Jake and Dr. Sprague and Mary Ponasek and I met initially just so they had an idea of what our pool is, what our aquatic center looks like, and if it was even of interest of theirs to take it on for coordination. After that, then Mary Ponasek and I went to the aquatics board and spoke with the aquatics board about it. One thing that if you take a look in your agenda and in your notes, it did pass the aquatics board unanimously to come to our board tonight for recommendation of partnering with the Woodson YMCA. So the biggest thing that we talked about on the end of like donors is it is still the Unified School District of Antigos Pool. It's still always going to remain the Claire R. McKenna Aquatic Center, and it is still our community's gem. And what the Woodson is offering is support, subject matter expertise, coordination, and direction. And so ultimately, running as effectively and as efficiently and providing programming that our community can use and need. So they are all on board.
Katie Ann referred to the note. I just want to read this. This did come from Jerry Rice, and the note says that he says, "Hi all, I have received replies from everyone, and thank you each so much for the quick action. The sentiment is unanimous to advance to the school board the MOU from Woodson YMCA, Jerry." So we did receive that they were unanimous. Good?
So like the community assessment fund, would that be recommendations, like if we have to increase it or decrease it or keep it the same, will that still come from you, Katie, or will that come from the YMCA or a collaboration, or how will that work?
I definitely see a collaboration in that, recommendation, but ultimately it is our decision as a school, the Antigos School District and you as a board, what we decide to do with that. I think it was increased 2 years ago to the 300,000 mark, and that's where we've been for 2 years now. Really not knowing what the economy or the future holds, I would, hate to speak to where that may be, but at the moment, keeping it where it is, I think is sustaining what our needs are at the moment. So.
Great question, JD. Thanks. Anybody else before we go back to Angie? Angie, go ahead.
Okay, so I have 2 questions. The first question is, so when somebody pays the fee for the aquatic center, will that be going to the school district? Will that be going to the Y? Or will that be split? How is that gonna?
That'd go to the school district.
Okay, thank you.
So I can just kind of elaborate. All revenues come to the school district as they do now.
Okay.
All expenses will be paid by the school district. What will funnel through the Y is the lifeguards, our YMCA employees. The director will be a YMCA employee, and then the administrative costs. Those will come through billing from the YMCA. Jake has a crew member that helps out at the Aquatic Center already, and that will stay the same. And all other expenses will still be incurred by us just as they are now.
Okay, so we will be cleaning the pool, or who will be doing that?
I would love for Abby to kind of explain what they do at other aquatic centers at the current moment. Currently, we do some cleaning. We hire some cleaning third party with a third party cleaning service. And so I just thought this was really neat when Abby brought it up, but just kind of how they do that at other aquatic centers.
We can do it whatever makes sense for you. But different aquatic centers that we work with do it differently depending on what their staff is. I think the one we're talking about is like Rothschild Aquatic Center. We have like our opening and our closing checklists, which would include cleaning bathrooms, doing toilet paper, all of that kind of stuff, windows. But we can put anything on those. Obviously, all of these are secondary responsibilities, so it would never happen while they're on guard. But when they're on break, we bring them in 15 minutes early, overlap the shifts a little bit, and pretty creative with that and how we can rotate them through down on breaks to do their checklists for opening and closing procedures.
Okay, thank you.
So it's gonna take a while to get that system figured out. At some level, I always see us having some sort of district cleaning at night there. We're gonna try and be as efficient as we can, maybe make that less hours on my staff, a little more help from the lifeguards, but that's gonna take a process. But we would still have some sort of cleaning staff from my department.
Okay,
At some level, it just would look differently.
okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or discussion?
Well, maybe Danny, will you guys talk about the board retreat at all, or how this relates to bringing a YMCA to town or not to town, or?
I'll speak from my perspective, but then also Jill was there, and I'd like for her to chime in because she was the one that was asking a lot of questions of Brian that night. When I got over there, one of the first things that I was anticipating from Brian is, here's our pools. But actually, that was the last place that he took us, was to the pools. He took us everywhere else. And what really thrilled me the most was the senior 55 plus. What do you call it?
The landing.
The landing. And then another fun fact from the landing was that 48% of their membership is 55 years and older, 48%, and I thought that was pretty amazing. And they have 20% of their memberships is on some type of scholarship pay that's over there. And some of the questions, that we were saying is, we'll have to go farther for a task force, but that's where we were going. But he took us around the daycare center that's there, it was a very, very nice daycare facility. They've got a great facility that's running and operating there. However, that's not what's going to fit our needs at this time. And Brian was very specific, very adamant in saying, let's get together to find out what the needs of Anago really is. And that's where we want to focus and see what those needs really are to accommodate all for the community, from, children to youth to adults to senior adults even. And I know the senior citizens just recently purchased the old Edison Club. In fact, they're moving in a couple of weeks to the Edison Club. But we would still have events and things for them to do at the Aquatic Center as well. Very great facility, great. I mean, the staff there was just super friendly, and they've done a lot of training with the staff people that are there. And I think it would be a great partnership for our school to begin with this Woodson YMCA. But I'd like for Jill to give some of her feedback as well, if you would, please.
Can I just clarify one
Absolutely.
thing? JD, just to finish out your question, if we partner on the Aquatic Center side, it does not bind us into moving anywhere further if that is not the case, or if it is, fantastic. But it does not bind us in anything. They have ran Mosinee for 25. That's way more than what I thought. I thought it was only, maybe 10 at the most, but 25. But it does not bind us into anything further. So. But, yeah.
Jill, go ahead.
Yeah, Brian took a lot of time with us, and I appreciate it. I think we all got a lot out of that, and it fits in the discussion in terms of how does it tie into the community, but I think it's a separate discussion too in terms of the Aquatic Center, so I just want to make sure I'm clear about that. But a wealth of information. It was very eye-opening of what the Woodson YMCA has to offer the community in Wausau, all the expansion efforts that were done, the timeframes of that, how it worked to the Y's benefit. Going back to the 48% membership of 55 plus, your membership is 19,000 members, correct?
16,000.
16,000 members. So that was just a really, that data point stood out in terms of our community and looking at our needs. But a lot of time was spent in looking at the daycare, the expenses of a daycare, the community needs for a daycare, and how we already have a partnership currently in place. So things that we're doing, that the Y is doing in WASA, doing it differently, but areas that tie in, areas that we could pull in from. And Brian was very clear. I mean, the Wausau Y is like the best of the best. That place is incredible. I'm glad we could do that. I had no idea the extent to which the programming that can be offered. It's really tied to what the community wants and needs, and then they make it happen. But he was very open with, they've got an incredible facility, but that's not what, we're not going to have what they have because our population's different and our needs are different. So going there to see everything that they have to offer is incredible because you can just get a wide variety of thoughts, ideas. How do they incorporate the community? It's all community-based. It's membership fees and sliding scales and scholarships and really no one's left behind or left out approach. So I think it just provided a lot of discussion topics. It stood out specific to the Aquatic Center, the knowledge and expertise that you have in managing and operating aquatic centers, the districts, and how it can benefit our district. Dr. Sprague talked about, we've had Mary Petzak for a number of years now. She's done a great job. And she is now, entering retirement. That's a position that we have to fill. It's hard for us to fill positions, any district for that matter. So it's an opportunity for us to outsource expertise where they have proven that they can manage district aquatic centers and do it well. Look at areas that we're maybe underutilizing our aquatic center and how can we expand in those areas. Looking at it from a lens of expertise that they do day in and day out. So that was also helpful.
I would also like JD for Dr. Sprague to give her perspective because the three of us was there on that entire tour that Brian gave to us.
A lot of what my sentiments are have already been said, but I'm glad, Katie Ann, you answered JD's question about tonight's vote regarding management of the Aquatic Center, and our partnership is related to, obviously, because of Brian's position at the Y, but separate from any further discussions. So I think that's important to note. What really excites me is your willingness to partner with us on this particular vote tonight and the expertise you bring. It is a gem, the Aquatic Center of our community, and I think if we can maximize its use, and it's just the beginning, hopefully, of what we can build together, but you're very accommodating and helpful, and even being here tonight, just know that we appreciate that as well.
Are there any other questions or comments? JD?
In general, are YMCAs funded all by membership, or is there a lot of donations, or is there any tax support, or?
Yeah, they have local funding mechanism, but there's usually membership is a big piece of it, program fees, and then we do rely on the community, but that part of the community is so that we never turn anyone away. So we have an annual campaign on an annual basis, but we don't rely on funding to allow us to operate. So we're a fairly self-sufficient organization once we're embedded and put in place.
I mean, but so does the city of Wausau or someone tax a little bit to fund you or give you?
They don't. No.
They don't.
No, we're self-sufficient. I mean, you've heard the saying, if you've seen one Y, you've seen one Y. They're all different. They look, and it depends on what your community needs are, and they're even run a little bit differently. There's different funding mechanisms. Ours is pretty independent it's based off of a lot of it's membership revenue, program revenue. We do have many donors though that support us also. Yeah, we have an annual campaign every year of $400,000 that we raise. We provide $600,000 to $700,000 in scholarships between membership, swim lessons, summer camp, things of that sort.
What's the smallest Y you've ever seen? Still functions?
Y I've ever seen. There used to be a rule that you had to have 10,000 population. Our smallest in the state might be Rhinelander, but I'll tell you, Medford is getting a Y, as an extension of the Marshfield Y. Neelsville, Wisconsin, so over the last number of years, Park Falls is getting there, so you start to go, Antigo's bigger than some of those communities, so why not Antigo, correct? So they're all a little bit different. You certainly have to have sustainability, so if what you're gonna build needs to be sustained. So you start to look at it, as Jill mentioned, you know, we probably have one of the biggest square foot Ys in the state. I think we have 170,000 square feet. That's humongous in that standpoint. We're on 2 city blocks, but we have a big population from that standpoint. You know, you may be looking at a 40 or 50,000 square foot facility, and you can carve out the square footage and the needs based off of what the things we're trying to accomplish in the community. So they're all a little bit differently on it. Can't get too small. You gotta have the population. Even in Park Falls, that's not a very big community, so they'll serve, instead of right in the core, it's gonna go out to a 10, 20-mile radius from that standpoint in their particular situation, which would probably happen here in Antigo also. But certainly a bigger core base right in this community.
Any other questions?
Katie Ann, can you talk a little bit about the terms and the renewal in the MOU?
Yes, so the MOU is a 3-year MOU. Now, in there, it automatically renews on the same terms and conditions in successive 3-year terms. Each party may terminate, that's right in the beginning, the agreement by giving the other party written notice of termination at least 6 months before the end of the current term. So we're into a 3-year term, and as long as we give 6-month notice on that 3-year term, we can terminate without a renewing rolling contract. So questions on that?
So if we were to decide not to renew after, so in the contract right now, it's January 1 of 2025, but if we were to decide we didn't want to continue with the contract, say in March 1st, 2025, it would already be.
Yeah, well, the reason we put 6 months, because we'd want to give you guys time to plan accordingly to make sure that you could have the staff and everything accordingly from that. And if we were to begin operating your pool, we put in June, we wanted a month overlap of the current leadership so that we could get our hands around that on it, but otherwise 6 months, just so we'd have transition time if you were to, instead of renewing a 3-year contract in the future, you'd let us know at least 6 months before, so we know, including for our employees, so forth.
Any other questions?
Somebody in the audience is wondering if they can ask a question.
Not at this time. This is a board meeting. Thank you, ma'am. Any other questions? Okay, hearing no questions, we will open the voting device. If you are in favor of the MOU with the Woodson YMCA. Would anybody like to change their vote? Okay, and the voting is closed. All in favor, the motion carries. Thank you, Brian and Abby. You should take her by your old high school before you leave town. Item C, consideration to approve second reading of policy 6325, procurement, federal grants and funds. I will be looking for a motion, please.
I move the board approve the second reading of policy 6325, procurement, federal grants and funds revision as presented.
Motion has been made. Andy, would you like to speak to your motion?
No, I would let, I think Katie Ann, you would speak to this, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Any questions or comments? No questions? Katie Ann, you can come up and give a brief what this is.
Yep, so this has gone through policy committee. It has actually gone through board once already. This is the second reading. It brings us in alignment with DPI federal regulations for purchasing any kind of capital or procurement things through federal grant funds.
Any questions for Katie Ann? Any questions? Hearing no questions, the voting device is open. This is for the second reading of Policy 6325, Procurement. I can't see who the second one is there.
Trina.
Would anybody like to change their vote? Okay, the voting is now closed, and the results, and the motion passes. I know I'm going to get this confused tonight, so I'm just going to say this. We're going to go on to consideration to approve second reading of NEOLA Update Volume 31, Number 2. I will be looking for a motion.
I move the board approve the second reading of NEOLA Update Volume 31, Number 2 as presented.
Motion has been made. Andy, would you like to speak to the motion?
No.
Any discussion of the motion on the floor, the second reading of this update? Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, the voting device is open for the second reading of NEOLA. Would anybody like to change their vote? Okay, the voting is closed, and the motion carries. Next item on the agenda, consideration to approve settlement offer for government entity claims against JUUL Labs Incorporated. I will be looking for a motion.
I move the board approve the settlement offer for government entity claims against JUUL Labs, Inc. as presented.
Motion has been made. Dr. Deep, would you like to speak to the motion?
Well, as presented in the report, that speaks for itself, so I support that.
Okay, are there any, is there any discussion? Any comments? Dr. Sprague, do you want to comment on this, as you and Mary Kay have done a lot of legwork? And
Well, if you read through the attachment, you'll see that our award is $37,056. However, about 25% of that will be used for being part of the lawsuit for attorney fees and whatnot. So the report also lists that all of the districts, and I took a look specifically at Wisconsin districts, so not everyone took advantage of this. Very limited work on our end, basically just a report with number of students, et cetera. Do we have students who vape? Obviously, that answer was yes. And then on page 3 of the attachment, you'll see what the proceeds can be used for. So I know it's not a lot of money, but for what we put into it, I think it is definitely an outcome that we're grateful for anything that can help us in the step of the right direction of getting kids away from that behavior and use.
any other questions or discussion? Hearing no questions or discussion, the voting device is now open. Would anybody like to change their vote? Okay, the voting is now closed, and the motion carries. Consideration to approve the 2022-2023 budget amendment. I will be looking for a motion.
I move the board approve the 2022-2023 budget amendment as presented.
Motion has been made. Dr. Deep, would you like to speak to the motion?
I looked through the report that is presented by Katie Ann, and it details the reasons for the amendment, and I agree with that.
Okay, is there any other discussion or questions about this amendment to the budget? Any other questions or discussion? Hearing no questions or discussion to the amendment, the voting device is now open. Would anybody like to change their vote? Okay, the voting is now closed, and the motion carries. Next item on the agenda, consideration to approve retirement HRA district contribution plan. I would be looking for a motion.
I move the board authorize administration to transfer funds from the salary budget to the Fund 73 Trust for the purposes of making a contribution to the district's HRA plan in an amount not to exceed $76,000.
Motion has been made. Dr. Deep, would you like to speak to your motion?
Well, I support this recommendation from our business office, and it was discussed in committee as well.
Are there any questions or discussion? Are there any questions or discussion? Hearing no questions or discussion, the voting device is now open. Would anybody like to change their vote? The voting is now closed. And the motion carries. Next item on the agenda, consideration to approve Donovan Group contract renewal. I will be looking for a motion.
I move to postpone the consideration to approve the Donovan Group contract till our April board meeting.
Motion on the floor to postpone to the April board meeting. The discussion on the Donovan Group contract is on the floor. Dr. Bardo, would you like to speak to your motion?
The reason I made this motion is from an email that was sent to all the board members today from the board president.
I do want to correct, that email was sent to Dr. Sprague and to Mary Kay, not to all the board members. They were going to send it out to all the board members.
Okay, I misspoke. I'm sorry.
So, Mary Kay, that email has a list of various other consulting firms that once this agenda went out to the public, I received some emails and some text messages from people giving a list of some ideas and suggestions that we vet a lot of different consulting firms. And in fact, just this afternoon, one more came from one of our school board candidates who's not here tonight, but she recommended another consulting firm that was used in another district, as well as another community member sent an email from their district. So we want you to look at all of these consulting firms, and this is going to be placed on all the agendas for the committees, and the committees will look at the agendas. Hopefully you will vet those consulting firms between now and your respective committee meeting, and the top 2 or 3 consulting firms that rises to the top is what we will look at the April board meeting. Does that make sense? Questions?
So you're going to bring forward to the board to make a decision at that time? Not just bring one group?
Right, it will
for
be,
decision, but then you'll have an open discussion with the board to make a
yes,
decision at that
yes.
May I clarify
Yes.
too? So originally, what you would have voted on tonight, you see the agreement there, and then the second attachment is our representative from the Donovan Group, Lori Miller's progress report, if you will, a synopsis of the work she's helped our district complete in the last year that we've been under contract. So the last 4 attachments were simply because when I met with Dave and Danny, if this is approved, I wanted them to know that cost of the facilitation for any facilities task force would be included in the price of this contract. So they are not necessarily meant to have to be together. In other words, I would still support and ask the board to approve the Donovan contract, even if the board elects to go with a different consulting firm for facilities. As I shared at the committee meeting, all of these documents that have gone to the public and the board, from the report card companion piece to our newsletter, has been courtesy of the Donovan Group, which is something that we simply don't have the means to do in-house, so it's been really helpful to contract with them. But I just wanted to make sure you knew that if the board were agreeable, you could still vote tonight regardless of the facilities facilitation.
Okay.
So are we gonna bring in those?
Hold 1 second.
Oh,
Jill
sorry.
had the floor next. Oh, you said,
Dr. Deep helped clarify.
Okay.
To further better understand, what are you asking of the committees before the next board
the
meeting?
committees will be looking at all of the various consulting firms that will come in that email. If, I don't know if Mary Kay has sent it already to all the board. We'll look at all of those consulting firms, and then they will discuss in committee the firms, because there's several of them. I don't know exactly how many that there were, which one rises to the top in the committee level, and then of the committees, those 2 or 3 that's gonna come to the top is what we will discuss on April 27th.
And what are these
But
committees?
that would be a little confusing, Danny, because if you have 3 different committees, 4 different committees right now, so if each committee comes up with a different one, how are you going to decide which 2 or 3 that you're going to bring to the next board meeting? I think you might probably need to have a special meeting,
Yeah.
or you cannot bring it to the April meeting. It's a free-for-all, then you're
Right.
dealing with 10, 12, whatever number of choices that you have. I think you probably need to
Right.
decide ahead before you, or the board has to have a separate meeting, interview all of them at the same time, because each committee may only look at a certain group. So
Right.
maybe having a special meeting of the board to make the decision, or after the new board is constituted.
Dr. Deep, we could potentially, since we're not gonna have a policy committee meeting, we could do on that 3rd Monday, a special meeting with the board with all that's come out from the committee meetings and discuss at that meeting, to bring forth to the, board meeting at the end of the month.
Just bring one
Yep.
group that meets everybody's choice.
Sure.
That would hear the board what they want to decide.
Yes.
So the consulting, what's the goal of the consulting group? I think that's where I'm struggling to differentiate, because I'm getting a sense that this discussion currently is more centered on facilities. But when this was brought to the committee and then to here, it wasn't specific to facilities planning. So that's where I guess I'm asking for clarification.
Well, and Jill, exactly, and what I'm understanding with Dr. Sprague, whenever we met, is like she spoke about, the Donovan Group was all-encompassing. However, the community has sent, if we're gonna focus on this big project that's ahead of us with the task force, it might behoove us to look at other groups that can help with the task force, with the facilities, as well as what we are expecting from the Donovan Group. Because some of those committees or some of those groups may not be able to do what the Donovan Group is doing. So that's where we're gonna weed that out through vetting all of their candidates potentially. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Andy?
So it would make sense that if we're gonna pick out 2 or 3 top ones, that we have them come and make a presentation to the board. Either in person or by Zoom.
That's very doable. And it might be easier, like you said, Andy, with the Zoom meeting with those groups coming in.
Well, that's really up to them.
Yeah.
You know, I think we all know that you lose something of your presentation in Zoom, but if that's the way they want to do it, so be it.
Sure. Any other questions or discussion?
I have a question.
Katie Ann, come on up to the mic.
So I just want to clarify who's doing the vetting, and if and when that vetting's occurring, do you know what list of criteria is needed to do the vetting on whether they are able to answer or not? You know, if we're gonna compare, we should compare apples to apples. And so, you know, currently with the Donovan group, we meet 15 minutes to a half hour every week. And then they're in contact with several different people throughout our district. I mean, they work with our IT team, they work with the admin team, they work with our building admin. So I just want to make sure that if we're vetting, that we're looking for the same set of criteria and that we're comparing apples to apples, and that we're able to look at two different proposals and say, okay, yes, this makes sense, and not, oh, well, I guess I forgot to ask that person about it if multiple people are vetting multiple different companies. So I guess just confirmation on who's doing the vetting and that we all have the same list of criteria of what we're kind of looking for, so that when we do get a presentation and a quote, it's apples to apples.
Sure.
So.
Great question. I think to answer that, it would be in the committee level with the administrator that's with that committee. So for you, the finance committee, you would play a big role in that vetting process with the board members. However, the board members can look at what that company has to offer through their website, through their contacting that firm on their own, and bring those questions to the committee. And then you, as the finance committee, and then so on for the other groups, can go through the process of vetting so we can be apples to apples, because we don't want any, anything to be off kilter. We want everybody to be on the same level playing field. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Trina?
So do we have a list of criteria that we're looking for, or we need to create that? Because if everybody just goes and searches websites for stuff, that's gonna be kind of
We
a
can
mess.
get that list of criteria from the various administrators that have been working with the Donovan group, as what they look for. What did they look for in the Donovan group? And then we can look for that also. But that's what the administrators will do at the committee level, is go through that list of criteria of what they look for in the Donovan group and narrowed it down. Because I'm sure whenever Dr. Sprague found the Donovan group, there were probably others on the table as well.
So we're expecting administrators to get together, come up with a criteria list and bring that to the committee?
Well, they should have the criteria list from whenever they met with the Donovan group.
Okay, but that's the expectation we're
Yep.
putting out there?
Absolutely.
Okay.
But then wouldn't it make sense, Danny, to have the same team of administration, whether it's 3, 4, 5 people, be at every committee meeting, so that, all of those things can be answered, rather than, each person feeling the elephant out?
Well, I would hope that the administrators have walked through that process in the beginning, and they can vet this through the other groups as well.
But we have to make sure they know that.
Yeah.
Otherwise that's not fair. We're making just stuff up for them to do.
And to be honest, Donovan Group was picked particularly for the strategic planning process that I was
Correct.
charged to find a facilitator for.
And
So
it sounds
we didn't
like-
have, a specific list of criteria. We had worked with them in the past as a district. So,
Right, so it was chosen for strategic planning. If we think back to that meeting, that kind of went sideways, right, after all the summer sessions, and we decided we weren't gonna go farther with what happened out of the summer sessions. So now we're looking at something that's going to take on this facilities task force, so totally different. So I really think if the board's gonna do their due diligence, we come up with that list of criteria beforehand, because we're really looking for something totally different.
And I seriously hope that you can do all of that in the next 2 weeks, Danny. We
Exactly.
have committee meetings next week and the week after.
Exactly.
I think this needs to be planned out well before you make an important decision like this. I very much doubt that we'll be able to do it in the next month.
Well, I think the reason why this was brought forth is because the community has spoken
Right.
and said that this is what they want us to do, rather than jumping in with one group. Let's see what else is out there. But let's form a plan.
I completely agree with you,
Yeah.
but I think you're rushing it. I don't think this board will make a very informed decision in 2 weeks.
Okay.
And-
I think you need to plan it out better.
I completely agree with Dr. Deep that we can look at a bunch of people, but if we don't actually know what everybody's looking at, the committee meetings are gonna be a waste of time, and we're gonna just spin our wheels. So if we can make that productive, that would be great.
So then, Trina, could we, at the committee level, form those those goals of what's expected from in these next 2 weeks from the committee level, and then begin the vetting process?
Maybe. I mean, yeah, we could start coming up with that list of criteria. I think that's a fair place to start.
Yeah.
It would be nice to have some direction on, it feels as though our district does not have direction. Like, this conversation is, I'm struggling with it because we're being asked to invest in a consulting group for a second year in the committee discussion specific to strategic planning, and it was said again tonight. It didn't go as hoped, and the community didn't respond the way in which we had anticipated or hoped for. So there's that aspect of things, but right now this conversation is really, and I appreciate Trina's feedback and Dr. Deep trying to narrow it down to what our goal is and the criteria and what we're looking for. I wish we could say, or Dr. Sprague or Danny could share, our district goals are this is what we are addressing: learning loss, reading, literacy, behaviors. This is what we are wanting a consulting group to do. This is so we can know what we're vetting, but right now it feels really all over the place.
So I feel what you were just saying about the goal, student achievement, that's part of that vetting criteria. But you were about to say something.
And see, my understanding's different. I thought that initially this would come just for the work that we were doing in the past year with the Donovan Group and our request to move forward with that work. But in the meantime, a facilities task force idea was born, and we all agree we need someone to facilitate that work. So just because I'm fiscally minded, I wanted to make sure the board knew, I think I've said it 2 or 3 times, that that cost of facilitation would be included in this contract. Whether or not the board would choose the Donovan Group, the cost doesn't change, which is why personally I feel disappointed there won't be a vote tonight, perhaps. But so that was an afterthought, Jill, the facilitation of a task force based on facilities. You're right, it was not mentioned at committee because it wasn't the primary focus of this contract.
Correct, yes, and I agree. If I can respond, I don't even know, I don't want to speak out of order, but I agree and appreciate being fiscally responsible and choosing a consulting firm that can meet the needs across the board to include the facilities task force. I guess part of me is wondering, the Donovan Group seems to be doing a lot of marketing, social media, organizational charts, internal documents. Again, what are we wanting to see out of $36,000 contract specific to Donovan Group, separate from facilities? What is the district needing that we need to contract again? What's that need? What's that goal? What's that, that's where I'm struggling to connect dots specific to what was initially brought up in committee, and then what came after was the facility. So I feel like it's still 2 kind of separate things. But ideally, we want a consulting group that can tackle both.
Or do you feel like you're getting a lot of, how much money did we pay for Donovan Group last year?
The same.
The same. Yeah, do you feel like you're getting a lot of bang for your buck, so to speak? It's sort of like having one staff member, but who's good at marketing.
We do.
You're essentially trying to bring in students to the district.
We do, or we wouldn't have brought it forward again. Just the report card companion pieces alone, I don't know how many hours that she spent working with our individual schools on that, but it made it understandable for our families, and she has a team of designers behind her that we don't have. It's just, and we've developed a really effective working relationship. Like Katie said, we meet every week, and we do have, you'll see it in her second attachment, her progress report. We have met all of the not really goals, I wouldn't call them, Jill, but projects, like what we wanted out of this first year. And I brought hard copies, both to the committee and tonight. They've all been materialized with the exception of the video production, which is now in their hands, because Ben Wilhelm helped us here in the district first with the footage, so now they're compiling it for us.
So it's not like this has to be both or nothing. We could have Donovan Group for one, this communication portion, and we could get somebody else to do the strategic planning if we.
Correct.
Correct.
And knowing that, why hasn't Donovan offered us two prices, one with strategic planning and one without? Because strategic planning seems like a tremendous load to me.
Because that's their pay scale. It is all encompassing. What we need for that price, they deliver. Which is why I put the attachment. She has experience in that, and so it's one price whether or not she does the facilitation for us, the consulting.
So this is, because they're doing our communication,
It would
that
be
would be
included.
easier for them to do the facilities planning, because they would be doing our communication to the community on it.
Right.
Okay, I understand that.
And Andy, whenever we met with Dr. Sprague, that was one of the things that I spoke up, is they already have the history of the school, and that was what was appealing to me personally. However, after that meeting is whenever all these emails from the community, so I just think we need to make sure that we're doing our due diligence and touching on what we need to do for the community is what the community is asking for.
Yeah, I realize that, but I also realize that if we're gonna vet companies for this facilities planning thing, that this, we also ought to be including somebody from the Boys and Girls Club and somebody from the YMCA, because we're saying that that's part of the whole thing. Maybe.
And I believe we did say that we would have those people with this task force as well.
With the task force, but I'm saying if we're choosing a company to do this strategic planning, they should have a say in it. If we think that we need to vet, they should be part of that vetting process.
Oh, I understand what you're saying.
Maybe that would be Angel Zimmerman from the Boys and Girls Club, and I don't know if it would be Brian from,
But my opinion of that is who's paying for the vetting process, or who's paying the company is the school district, not the Boys and Girls Club or the other.
who do you want to cooperate with, is my opinion of that.
True.
So, and I would have brought this up earlier to say that we should be vetting, back in January, when you talked about having WASB, but the downside to doing all this vetting is the Boys and Girls Club and the YMCA they're steps ahead of us, and they kind of want to get moving, and I think they're going to move without us if we don't get on board. I shouldn't say I think they're going to move without us, but there's that potential. They want to go. Okay, I'll let Dr. Bardo have some.
Actually, Angie had her.
Oh, Angie, okay.
Dr. Bartle, hold that. Angie?
So I was understanding the motion to be a little bit different, because I thought we were looking at vetting different companies to make, on the whole package, meaning the communications and the task force. Like Jill said, they should be able to do both, right? And so I think I understood it as we were like looking at, is Donovan Group the best choice for the communications aspect of the school district? I think we all agree that the strategic planning kind of went sideways. And so, I mean, is there another entity out there that could possibly do, in our opinion, provide better service than a Donovan Group? And I think that's my opinion of why, Dave was looking at postponing this and giving us a chance to look at the other companies, because then we can say, yes, we decided to go with this company because they can do the communications and the task force, or if we decide to stay with Donovan Group, we make a more educated decision on renewing the contract with the Donovan Group.
Right.
Am I understanding that correctly?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Dr. Bardo?
I guess my position, first of all, is that, yes, I think as we go forward, there's going to be some, and I'm talking the task force. It's a board-directed task force, and the thing that that task force will be looking at is the buildings we have, the needs we have, and what buildings that we currently have can we use going in the future, and is there a need for an addition to a building or a new building to be built? How the YMCA and how the Boys and Girls Club are part of that is later on, only because it's our buildings that we're talking about. That's my position. With my original motion, the idea was to focus the board going forward to try to look at options for facilitators for the task force. So I think we've talked about that, and I understand from what Trina and Dr. Deep talked about. My feeling is that I understand now that we will be going forward looking at the option of someone else to run the task force as the facilitator, and it may end up being the Donovan Group, but I think it's in our best interest to look for a facilitator who has dealt with schools and school task force with building projects. So, with that being said, my feeling now that what I wanted this to go forward with is I think the board understands that we need to do something about getting a facilitator that we like. I will withdraw my motion and allow someone else to make a different motion.
I have a point of privilege, I believe. So this contract that we're looking at tonight starts on Saturday, correct? So either way, if we don't vote, our contract with Donovan Group is over with on Friday. So really, by not voting, we're making a decision just because it's over, just so everybody's aware.
Are we all supposed to go look for consulting groups, or do you got a solid list already of ones we're considering?
I'll forward it to you, JP.
I mean, but like, is WASB on there?
No, because WASB's told us that they could only go so far with the facilitating, because we have so many components with the YMCA and other components going in the Boys and Girls Club that they don't feel comfortable, qualified, because they're looking at from just the education side.
So right now, there's no motion.
Right now, there's no motion on the floor, so if somebody would like to make a motion, I will entertain that motion.
I move the board approve the renewal of the Donovan Group contract in the amount of $36,000.
Motion has been made. Andy, would you like to speak to that motion of renewing the Donovan contract?
Yeah, I just think that they have put a lot of work into our community already, and we're doing this community education project with them, and that has a lot of value. And even if we choose somebody else to do the strategic planning thing, so be it.
Any other questions or discussion with the motion on the floor of renewing the Donovan Group contract?
Julie, what would happen if we took 2 more months and then eventually re-signed on with the Donovan Group? They would just stop working with us for a little while and then come back-ish?
No, there are 2 projects out there yet, the legacy mural and then the video. Production will certainly be finished after our contract expires, but no, I mean.
We mean,
they would continue at least in those two capacities.
Okay, but theoretically, they could get renewed later, but you'd probably lose your 15-minute, or you mean the staff meetings and all that stuff?
Theoretically.
Any other questions or comments? I will still go on record by saying I support with what I discussed with Julie in her office, that the Donovan Group, in my opinion, probably has an upper hand because of already having the information on our school district and having worked with us for the last year. And they too, because Dr. Sprague has assured us that they can work with us with this task force committee and with the facilitators. So I'll stand still by saying I support the Donovan Group. Just wanted people to know that we wanted to listen to what the board wanted for listening to other facilitators. Kristen.
So a lot of what the Donovan Group has done are roadmaps and guides and that sort of thing. So do you think you have the backbone of those projects to continue with those as it is? Do you feel that that would be a job for someone, a completely staff member's job, or which we are already having issues staffing, kind of like what we just discussed about with the Aquatic Center, that this is an entity that's going to take a staff's position?
We're much better off than we were a year ago. We knew going in that we were asking for a communications firm to contract with because we don't have a communications coordinator. So that was the reason. Eventually, we'd like to wean ourselves away and not need the contract. It's not just the two projects that are out there, but there's more work to be done. And to be honest, they're so efficient, and whatever we verbalize, her team makes it happen. We just don't have that capacity on our own. So that's why we brought it forward for another year.
So for $36,000, we're getting a full-time staff member with no benefits.
Essentially, yes.
With a team of graphic designers behind them?
Angie, you have a question?
Yeah, first to kind of address what Kristen just said, but that would also be what the other companies, in essence, could provide if we decided to go with somebody else. So I don't think we should look at it as getting an employee, or, somebody that's not an employee with benefits and everything from this, because we could go with a different company and it would provide the same type of service. Does that make sense?
If I understand correctly, though, Angie, that's not what the board would consider. They would be looking, correct, Annie, just for the task force facilitation, not
communications.
Correct.
Okay, so thank you for making that point, because earlier you said that the Donovan Group, the main focus was to do the strategic planning, correct? So if we're not going to be having them do a strategic planning session, again, because like the last one went sideways, why are we looking at the same amount for the contract? Because they're not going to be doing the same amount of work.
I see it as different work, related work.
Okay.
I think it might be maybe even a little bit more work with the facilities. I don't know that, but because I've not been down that road.
Well, my opinion, I don't think we should have them for the facilities, because I didn't think they did I didn't think they did a very good job with the strategic planning. I've been in numerous sessions at the state level, at other, nonprofit levels and everything, and I didn't think that it was a very good job. Nothing against her personally, I just don't think that was done very well. And I think we shouldn't use the same company that did a job poorly for us in the past again.
Can I clarify something?
Yes,
From what I
ma'am.
said earlier. When I said that strategic planning went sideways, I guess what I was specifically referring to from my point of view was there was a lot of work from the community and from staff members put in, and then I personally feel like that wasn't validated when it was put together as a plan and really just shut down. I didn't see the Donovan group as the ones being at fault there. I really truly don't. So when I say it went sideways, I do not mean because of anything that the Donovan group did. So if that was insinuated, I apologize. That was not the intention of that comment. Just to clarify.
I appreciate your feedback, and in our committee meeting, Dr. Sprague did share, it didn't go as planned. It was hopeful to have gone in a more positive way, but it didn't. So I know that's not what your intent was. I think I was just kind of recapping, but I appreciate that. I guess at the end, I'm struggling because last year when we had this discussion to approve the Donovan group, it was 1 year using ESSER funds, one and done kind of a thing. Now we're on year 2 and we're saying we want it again for $36,000. And we hope to not have it in the future, but like fizzle it out at some point. My struggle is, what's our end game? So we are contracting, but we're not identifying when we see the need is met, I guess. So in year 3.
But we do, perhaps not the board.
And if they're if they're focusing on communication, the board should have clear communication on that too. So I believe that they've done very positive work.
Mm-hmm.
That work has been brought to the board more recently. I would like to see communications more frequently about that work, and I think the board has asked, what is the Donovan group done? What are they providing? That's been more unclear until the last hour, meaning the last committee meeting where you shared out a lot of positive information about them, which I appreciated. Where I'm going with this is they're helping with communication, but there seems to be some miscommunication, or what's the end game or goal? How does it tie to district needs? How are we going to determine as a district we no longer need to contract for communications purposes with an outside source? Like, this started as a 1-year ESSER fund. Now we're on 2 years. Is it going to be 3? Is it going to be 4? Like, what are we needing from this? What's our goal as a district, as a board? That's where I feel very unclear at this point.
The financial piece, we still have ESSER dollars at our disposal and encumbered for that purpose now. Certainly, we would spend that money elsewhere if the board doesn't pass this. Keep in mind, though, ESSER funds was the only reason I brought it forward to last year. So I'm not foolish enough to think that it would be an every year thing, but when you have that money at your disposal and you're looking to fill gaps that we have, trying to move our school improvement plan forward, it seemed a likely resource to tap into, and we've, from my perspective and the team with whom I work, we've been very pleased with their performance.
Can I call the question?
Yes. Okay, the question has been called. The motion on the floor is I move the board approve the renewal of the Donovan Group contract renewal in the amount of $36,000. Your voting devices are now open.
Is this voting to call the question, or is this
Yes,
voting on the
I'm sorry,
motion?
voting to call the question.
Oh.
Voting to call the question.
Thank you, Andy.
Anybody like to change their vote? All right, the voting is now closed. And the motion carries. We will now have the motion on the floor. I move the board approve the renewal of the Donovan Group contract renewal in the amount of $36,000. The voting,
Okay.
the voting device will be open in just a moment. Now open. Would anybody like to change their vote?
Yeah, mine came up not what I pushed, so I guess.
Just re-push it, and it'll change.
Okay, I'll let you do that.
No, you gotta push it.
Did it change on your screen?
Yeah, it says okay.
So Destiny's screen should reflect?
Yes,
Okay.
the vote should be changed to what you
Okay.
proposed.
Anybody else change their vote? And the voting is now closed.
So did
I
yours
voted.
malfunction?
Yeah, I voted no 4 times.
You gotta know, though.
You got a no vote.
Oh, I thought, I'm sorry. You know, after all this time, I saw blue, and I thought it was blue, and I was waiting for red for when it was a no.
There are 6 in favor of and 3 opposed.
I apologize.
The motion passes.
When your eyes are 71.
Next item is consideration to approve Start College Now students for fall 2023. I will be looking for a motion.
I move the board approve the Start College Now students for fall 2023.
Motion has been made. Dr. Deep, would you like to speak to your motion?
No, I support it.
Any other questions or comments?
I will abstain from voting on this.
Okay.
Good for all these kids. Looks like good work.
I think that's
Absolutely.
I know, but you always say it, so I'm just saying it.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, the voting device is now open for the motion on the floor of approving the Start College Now students. Would anybody like to change their vote? Okay, the voting is now closed. And the motion carries with one person abstaining. Next item is consideration to approve high school walk-in freezer and cooler replacement. I will be looking for a motion.
I move the board approve the high school walk-in freezer and cooler replacement quote from Strength Equipment for $76,185.
Motion has been made. Andy, would you like to speak to the motion?
We went over this in committee, and this was not the lowest bid, but Jake outlined for us that it was the best construction.
Any other questions or comments? Any questions or comments? Okay, the voting is now open. Would anybody like to change their vote?
What's the airplane at the top on this clicker?
Question for Dustin.
Anybody? Can I just click that and see what it does after the? Looks like a paper airplane to me.
Above the letter 1. It's a button.
We'll wait until after the meeting, then you can push the buttons. The voting is now closed, and the motion carries.
Pushing it next time. What are we voting on?
Report of donations, I will be looking for a motion, please.
I move the board approve the following donations: $275 from various donors for the Nobokan Environmental Education Center in memory of Bill Johnson, $100 from Jamie and John Myers for the Nobokan Environmental Education Center in memory of Bill Johnson, $100 from Matthew and Jaretta Shinners for the Nobokan Environmental Education Center in memory of Bill Johnson, $500 from Schultz Heating and Cooling, Antico Refrigeration and Heating for Greenhouse Project, $250 from Kretz Lumber Company, Inc. for Greenhouse Project, $5,000 from the J.W. Mattock and Sons, Inc. for Greenhouse Project, $300 from Wilds Dairy Farm, Inc. for the Greenhouse Project, $300 from the Deerbrook Eager Beavers 4-H Club for the Greenhouse Project, $2,500 from Johnson Electric Coil Company for the Nobokan Environmental Education Center in memory of Bill Johnson, $500 from William and Beth Bacchus for the Nobokan Environmental Education Center in memory of Bill Johnson, $100 from Beth and Larry Pitts for the Nobokan Environmental Education Center, $200 from Marjorie Gibson for the Nobokan Environmental Education Center, $1,000 from the Burnhamwood Veterinary Services for the Greenhouse Project, $500 from Kevin Bula for the AHS softball program, $1,000 from Marshall Logging, Inc. for the Greenhouse Project, $2,000 from Wild Seed Farm, Inc. for the Greenhouse Project, $100 from William and Carol Seath for the Nobokan Environmental Education Center in memory of Bill Johnson, $35,000 from A Vanguard Charitable Fund Grant for the Greenhouse Project in memory of Richard Wiegert, $500 from the Antigo Junior Women's Club for the AHS Drama Club, $500 from the Matthew and Joretta Shinner's Family Fund for the Greenhouse Project, $500 from Wisconsin Seed Potato Improvement Association, Inc. for the Greenhouse Project, $500 from the WOM Companies for the Greenhouse Project, $7,500 from the Elvin Remington Foundation, Inc. for the Nobokan Environmental Education Center, for a total of $59,225.
Motion has been made. Dr. Deep, would you like to speak to that motion?
No.
He's out of breath.
He's out of breath. Any other questions, comments? Other than we have, as we have always stated, and we never take this lightly, a very giving community for our district. Hearing no comments or discussion, the voting is now open.
Doesn't do anything.
Doesn't do anything. He already checked it.
Had to press the button.
Would anybody like to change their vote? Voting is now closed. And the motion carries. Thank you so much for all of your giving. The next item is consideration of a motion to adjourn into closed session pursuant to section 19.851C of the Wisconsin statutes for the purpose of considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the Board of Education has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, including the performance evaluation for the district administrator. I will be looking for a motion.
I so move.
Motion has been made. Andy, would you like to speak to that motion?
No.
Any questions, comments, or discussion? Voting devices are now open. Would anybody like to change their vote? The voting is now closed, and the motion carries. We are now in closed session. Missouri, so if you want to give me any helpful hints, it's a good family.
Okay.
They're,
Take
I
a
do.
big, take a big sleeping pill, you'll.
Are we up yet? Do you like the guy?
They were, they're both retired teachers. Mom, Tamara, she would shoot me, hope that's not on yet. Tamara Abramovitz was a math teacher in high school, and his dad, George, was a history teacher, and they just retired 2 years ago from the Springfield Public School system.
So there you have somebody to read to the kids.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a lot of school discussions this past week in spring, about the Springfield schools. Are we ready to? Yep. Okay, after coming out of closed session, there is no action as a result of closed session. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn, all in favor of adjourning, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, same sign. That is carried. This meeting stands adjourned.
What do you need?
Yes, we have never kept the evals, we've always turned them back in.
I think we've had them